Hey there, welcome to the Multifamily Mixtape Podcast, brought to you by Multifamily Media Network. I'm your host, Mark Sharp. Multifamily Mixtape is an eclectic podcast as we will discuss any and all things multifamily, from maintenance how-to videos to interviews with industry experts. So sit back, relax, grab a drink, and join me for some campfire-style conversation and maybe a few laughs. Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Multifamily Mixtape. Joining us today, we have Kelsey Corey, the founder and CEO of Corey Executive Recruiting and Leaders on Deck. How are you?
I am so glad to be here. Thank you, Mark, again for inviting me to the show. I can't wait to dive into such a critical topic and be able to share with your audience and network. So thank you again for inviting me.
Oh, yeah, no, I appreciate you wanting to come on the mixtape here. But the reason I wanted to have you on, we are facing an employment crisis. Mm-hmm. We are facing just a lack of qualified personnel throughout the multifamily industry on operations side and maintenance side. And I was so excited to want to reach out to you because I do want to discuss these deficiencies, these issues, these things, these challenges that we're facing and try to determine, like, what is it? But before we dive into the three questions that I have for you, I would like for you to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yes, of course. Yes, I can't wait to dive into this topic. I think it's absolutely critical, and there's so much more information we can share with everybody. A little background on myself is I'm the founder of Corey Executive Recruiting and Leaders on Deck, which is our newest venture. And background on myself is that I fell into this industry just like everybody else did.
Everybody else.
And then you never leave. You end up finding that this is your home. This is your work home. This is what you love. And I think the biggest difference is that if you're a people person and you love serving your residents, your teams, your suppliers, whomever it is, this is the industry for it. And that's where I fell in love with the business. And a little background is that as an executive search firm owner, I have had the privilege and honor to hear so many different industry leaders' stories, different walks of life, different backgrounds, and different expertise. And it really comes down to a lot of different universal truths of what it comes down to in terms of why are candidates and top talent making those critical decisions to exit their current companies or resign and look for their next best venture, and really coming alongside different employers inside the market and multifamily and all verticals of real estate. And they're everyone's looking for the unicorn. They're looking for the one top performer, but oftentimes there's a misalignment with creating a healthy culture and an unhealthy culture. And so it's really, when you dive into it, there's so much complexities that go behind the scenes, but sometimes we make it more complex than what it really needs to be. And so with this, I've had the unique privilege of being able to place a lot of different talent in the industry over a decade of experience and really coming alongside both sides of the marketplace and sharing my insights. So thank you again, Mark, for bringing me onto this show today to talk to your audience. I think this is such a critical conversation, and I think people want to know. People want to engage with this type of conversation.
They do. And I touched briefly on something you said when you were just talking about how you fell into the industry. And back early when I started this whole podcast, one of the things that I said that I would love to try to do is figure out a way. I don't say figure out a way. The ways are out there, but we need to be better. We as an industry, pick your association, pick your whatever, but we as an industry need to be better at the recruiting. There's no reason why, for such a phenomenal industry, that people make their way there by accident.
Right.
This is a phenomenal industry. It's such a wonderful opportunity. And there's so many avenues that you can take within it. It's not just maintenance and leasing and office management.
Right.
There are so many other avenues in this industry that one person could take.
Yeah. And I totally agree with that. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Is there's this common theme that we all fall into it, but it's like, why is this not at the forefront whenever people are deciding after they graduate high school, even from that point on, if they're going to go into college, if they're going to go into trade school, or what is their options on the table, or if they don't go to any type of continued education. The amazing thing about real estate and property management and multifamily is that, like many of us, at least for me, I had no idea this industry even existed. I was never taught about this industry. I never even heard of this industry before. And honestly, if you ask a lot of your friends and your peers, when they ask what you do, their mind is, so you buy and sell homes? You're a realtor? It's like, that's really like that's kind of the scope. Exactly. And so it's funny because I too was that person, really had a very general idea of what is real estate and how complex it is. And it's so cool because there's so much verticals in it. There's so many different directions, and it comes down to the recruiting aspect. Back to what you were mentioning. And I think that I would love to see it just as much as you do, the shift where people are now having the opportunity to dive into this industry and knowingly what they're going to create their career trajectory. And right now it's still, which is so surprising, even after a decade being in here, and many folks that I talk to have been in the industry for 30 years, right? We still have the same story. So when are we going to change that story where it's people are like, I intentionally chose this path? And I love it. That's also part of your mission that you're bringing this forward here at Corey. We would love to be able to do the same thing.
Yeah, I love that. So let's dive into these 3 questions, right? And let's see what we can do. Let's see if we can get some information out there to employers, employees, to try to flip the script a little bit and change the perception. So first question, what can companies do differently in their employment ads to reach a higher quality individual?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. Oftentimes, if you look at the industry as a whole, 2 things happen. One, when they are looking to recruit, especially inside the maintenance personnel of all verticals, all levels within it, they're doing it after there's multiple fires, right? They're doing it after they should have already been proactive, looking for their next best hire. And then they're in rushing and trying to get this role filled. And then at that point, their blinders are up. They're not even looking at the whole landscape of what top talent is on the market because they're already behind on work orders. Their residents are being impacted, and then the teams as a whole is being impacted. And so I think the best thing that organizations need to do is think critically about, okay, if this is where we are today, and I think this ties into also scaling, right? Sometimes they scale, but they're not thinking about the personnel. They're not thinking about how that will impact of how they're going to get there. The recruiting needs to start in the very beginning of the process. And when they are advertising, recruiting, headhunting, oftentimes in multifamily, right? If you have a small organization, large organization, they're going to operate differently. They have different types of leaders sitting in the HR or the talent acquisition department. So if you work at a smaller organization where you have to roll up your sleeves and they don't actually have a dedicated department focused in recruiting, which is often the case, then they put an ad out. There might be somebody managing that process, but the reality is they're not actually headhunting, right? They're just waiting for anybody and everybody, a body, a soul to apply to the job. And then they're frustrated because they're not seeing results. And not only that, they're limiting themselves so much because the brand visibility is not getting out to folks just like on the other side of the market. And then you've got the bigger brands where they have an established, right, department heads, and they might have a full-on talent acquisition team. Of course, they're going to have an advantage when you go into the market because they have people designated in those seats to be able to advertise and recruit. But I think, in terms of being an employer, it's staying proactive. It's not looking at it after you think a problem's going to come up or you think you're going to have a transition or you're having a high turnover. As if you notice that you're having high turnover, refilling the job 5 times over is not going to solve your problem because right? The industry's small. The chatter is always circulating, and your brand reputation is everything. Yes, although you might get somebody to sign the dotted line and accept that offer, how long are they really going to stay with that organization if they're not setting them up for success? And I think that's what it really comes down to, whether you're a big brand or you're a smaller organization looking to recruit the best. And I also think it comes down to when you put your ads out and you are looking to recruit people onto your team, it really comes down to your brand reputation. It truly does. One, you either might have no reputation because no one knows you unless you're in a very local market and it's more word of mouth, which of course that's going to play into it. Or two, you do have a big brand, but you've tainted the experience of the maintenance personnel because guess what? You always look at them as they're not as the top priority on our hierarchy list of making them feel inclusive, making them feel like they matter just as equally as every single person on the team. And has that shifted? Sure. I think we have grown through that process, but I think there's so much more work to be done. So I think it's really looking at your brand reputation when you go to market, being proactive, looking at your turnover. How do you button that up? What do you need to do to roll up your sleeves and get in there and figure that out and not just put Band-Aids over this? And then hopefully the next person that gets hired is going to solve it. I call it the savior mentality. Is oftentimes when you're in a desperate situation and you're interviewing somebody, you can understand what they're looking for by their pain points because they'll focus on it in the interview. And they almost are looking to you to solve all these problems for them. And guess what? They'll take the job because they're just excited to have an opportunity. They'll get in there and they are not set up for success. And then it's on them. And then guess who gets fired or let go, or I would say written up, is because they put on all this expectation on that next hire, but they didn't actually set them up for success to thrive in that capacity. So I call it the savior mentality because they hope you're going to save them from the problems that they have never solved. And then it goes back to the employee, and guess who gets the brunt of it? You, as the person back on the market, frustrated and just disappointed that yet here you are again, and you know you bring such an incredible skill set and necessary. So I know that was a little long-winded, but hopefully that gives some more insights on what employers need to do in order to recruit the best talent in the marketplace. Is, what you say, how you say it, and your actions behind it is going to dictate the results and the type of talent you're going to bring onto your teams.
Right. I hear you said it really well in there that there's chatter in our industry. And I used to have a colleague say that the multifamily industry was the shallow end of an incestual pool, and that everyone's pulling from everybody. You're all in this very small body of water, and it's just everyone knows everyone. You have a conversation with someone, and then you drive 10 miles down the street, and it's already there. They already know what happened, and it's like that so many times. But because the industry is so small, because of your network, your association, whoever it is you're plugged into, I see people all the time on social media. Hi, looking for maintenance technician, need them all the certifications in the world, and need them to start immediately. And I just wonder, there's got to be a better way. You can't get probably, again, the chances of a unicorn just being like, hey, that's me. I have all those certifications. I'm currently not doing anything. I would love to come. That never happens. It never happens.
Especially in that sector, that never happens.
No. So I feel like the marketing there, or marketing is probably the wrong word, but I feel like the approach there is just, it's not going to be successful. You're looking for a body because you're short staffed, you're overworked, the work orders are piling up, and you just need somebody so fast to get in there and go close work orders. But you have to onboard them. You have to train them. A lot of our industry, the new people coming in, like everyone else, they fell into it. They don't know fair housing. And because of COVID, there's a whole generation of people who don't know how to have face-to-face conversations. It's this. And when you get a new maintenance technician to go and knock on someone's door, there's higher possibility of people being home or working from home now than there was 5, 6, 7 years ago. And so that face-to-face interaction, that conversation is something that these individuals are not prepared for. So like you said, you're not setting them up for success.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to do better, but I think that's a great way that employers, companies can do different, how to put their ads out to market to a different caliber individual. So that was great. So second question, what can maintenance personnel do better to attract more opportunities for themselves?
Yes, I think this is probably when I'm most passionate about, because here's the thing. The talent is there.
Mm-hmm.
There is lots of talent in this market. But the problem, the disconnect that we see is they don't know how, especially maintenance personnel, right? Is we can't find them. I think Indeed, Career Builder, Monster is maybe like what they're most familiar with. They go to Google, they find out they're laid off or there's a transition. What now? Or they're unhappy with their current role. Yes, they heard of LinkedIn. Yes, they understand like they need to get their resume and all this together. But if you think about it, I actually really empathize with them, because some of us sit behind a desk all day and this is just something that we're more comfortable with in terms of that. But when people like work with their hands and they work in a different capacity of their craft, this is a whole different animal when you have to figure out how do you market yourself? How do you garner the most visibility so you have more options, you can be highly selective, and that you can have more inbound leads coming to you. And this is all walks of life, right? Like it doesn't matter really what industry sector, even the highest executives I talk to, right? They need this coaching, they need this expertise, which means maintenance personnel absolutely is going to need this critical piece. So I'd say when you find yourself saying, okay, I need to find my next new venture, whatever that's going to look like, I think it's really making sure that one, you get all of your go to market, is what I call it. Go to market, figure out what kind of company culture aligns with you. What certs have you acquired over that time? All of them are critical and important. And when you get your resume and get all the information out there, oftentimes it's really like the resume piece that it's not even just like the ATS system, right? I think that's overused a lot. While the ATS is not picking up on their resume, it's not even really that. It's just the way that folks are writing their resume, especially if they're not used to updating a resume, is the format is all messed up. The words are not in the right spot. And then whoever's reading that, if they're looking at bringing on top caliber talent, and this is like the only piece of document you're going forward with, guess what? Depending who's reading that, if they're even reading it, they're moving on to somebody who is a lot more clear, articulate, and understands the value that they bring. Now, I will say as headhunters, our experience goes much deeper than the average hiring manager, because this is our craft. So we will not discount somebody if we see a poor written resume, because we can pick up and decipher, okay, like I understand who this is. They work with this brand. This is the experience. I'm still going to put them on my first call. But a lot of hiring managers do not have the same mindset nor the skills, and they just pass by information or they're not even looking at it. And so your resume really has to come down to get a very clear, I would say you can go online. There's different templates available. You don't have to redesign this all yourself. At the end of this, I can share some more resources of what you can do, because it's tough. Again, it doesn't matter if you're in maintenance or you're the highest on the totem pole of being an operational executive. Everybody struggles with that. And the second most important thing is show up on LinkedIn. I promise you, if you actually take the time, get your LinkedIn up to date, get a nice headshot, even if you have to go in your own backyard and take a picture, right? Something that is going to be clear, something that's going to show up, because, right, it goes back to you're showing up at residents' front doors. So your presentation does matter, right? For the brand and for the roles you want to attract. So that all plays into it as well. And I think getting all your contact information on your LinkedIn. So put your phone number, put your email, if you feel comfortable with that. The easier you can make it for people to headhunt you and call you about opportunities, the more opportunities you're going to have. The harder it is to find you and the harder it is to get a hold of you, you'll be frustrated because then it's all on you. You have to go out and headhunt for your own opportunity. And that's a full-time job, as we all know. And when you go on LinkedIn, I always say it's really important that you put SEO, search engine optimization words that are going to correlate back into the industry. So if you've been a maintenance technician, if you've managed certain unit count, that's critical. What type of assets are you overseeing? I want to know if you're working on class A, B, C, D. Are you in the affordable? Are you in lease ups? What is your background? What was the largest portfolio that you've overseen? Whether that was 150 units or have you overseen 1,500 plus units? Then we're looking at a different type of caliber of a leader, right? So think of things like that. Is there any systems or technologies that you've used, right? Yardi or Appfolio, anything that's going to resonate back. Because when you put that on your LinkedIn and your resume, especially in the multifamily, like I'm really being hyper focused in like real estate, us on the back end through LinkedIn Recruiter, right? Those are keywords that we're looking for constantly. So if you have that on your both sectors, you're going to now come up on the very first of our top of the list versus the 10th page. By the time you get to the 10th page, it's probably too late because we've already created a roster of who are we going to target, who are we going to contact. One tip I think is really important that a lot of people don't know is always put the largest metropolis market you are closest to.
Correct.
So do not put Folsom, California. No one's going to know where Folsom, California is. So you'll put Sacramento. If you are living in Boulder, Colorado, right? I would probably even advise you to put Denver metropolis because there's so many different, depending on where the portfolio is based. That I see all the time where people will literally put where they're actually located. Here's the problem. You will never come up on our searches because we're not thinking about like the tiniest markets. Even think about that. And when you get on an interview, you can specify. You'll have the opportunity to control that narrative. So those are just a couple tips is you want to be searchable. You want folks to find you. You want to have a clean presentation. It doesn't need to be perfect, but those keywords, the value you bring, all the certifications, be sure to put that on your LinkedIn because I guarantee you will see a lot more opportunities. We want to find you. We want to fill our jobs and we want you to be the person that we can call and say, wow, we found the one. But the problem is it's only through a lot of those third-party forms, and half the time the SEO is not even pulling it, and then we can't even find them on LinkedIn. We can't even find them online. So then it's near impossible for us to bridge the gap and fill these critical seats because I guarantee I know the talent is out there. It's just no one is able to fill those slots because we don't know where they are.
Yeah. I made a couple notes here, but one thing I want to touch on something you said when you were talking about how professional headhunters, you will find those individuals, whereas some other particular managers, depending on overlook some phenomenal individuals. And I've just never thought of it that way. Yeah. In that just like every job, every position, you have your maintenance supervisor, and I'm like really stretching here, but you have your maintenance supervisor, and then there's a different step to a regional, and then there's a different step to a VP or a director, and that step is the difference, that step up. And I don't know. I didn't think about it. It was just something that never really computed with me that professional recruiters, executive recruiters, headhunters, that's their job. It's what you do. And
that's our craft, right? That's our expertise, and a lot of hiring managers, they don't have the skill set. They don't have the bandwidth half the time. They're just throwing in, we've got all these openings. I need you to figure this out. That's why we get the calls because they're like, I literally do not have the capacity to even truly headhunt. And honestly, if you want to find the best talent in the marketplace, it comes down to headhunting. Will you receive applications that come through? Yes. But I would say even if you had 1,000 applications, right? So some of our jobs, you'll get 1,000 applications, not exaggerating, depends on the role. How do we assess who makes it to the list and who doesn't? I would say out of the 1,000 of like people coming to you, there's only like 10% of them are actually going to be qualified. And then out of that 10%, it's even lower who's a culture fit, right? Who actually aligns with the organization and mutually on both sides of the market. And so again, that's really where you want to make this easier, because you never know who's looking at your information and really what understanding. I always say too, like on your resume, this is just a really great tip I think is important, is if you worked at ABC Management, put in size underneath it. What is it that they specialize in? Say they are an affordable housing organization that focuses on third-party property management in the East Coast market, right? Something like that. I know that seems so high level, but here's the thing. I know who all the players are. So I'm immediately like, oh, I know that brand. I know their process. This must be top talent because I know that they would hire such and such. But that's also like part of my expertise. But a lot of people, they've never even heard of half these groups, right? Because they're so local or regionally based. They have no idea that you worked for this brand and what caliber or what type of background they have. And guess what? If it takes them time to go and research, they're probably not going to do it just because they have so many applications. So I'm like, if you really want to get to the top of the list and you really want to be like an all-star, make it so easy that anybody reading that information is going to say, I want to get you on my calendar today.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I think about a lot of times it ends up being at the property level. It's, hey, this maintenance left or whatever, we need to fill the position, and it's on the manager to fill the ad. The manager has to manage the property. Like you said, they don't have the bandwidth to manage the property and handle hiring. But just give me the next person who walks in the door, as long as they can pass a drug test, pass a background.
Right.
We can teach them the rest. Listen, there is no maintenance training anymore. So there is no, we can teach the rest. It's like you're trial by fire. Here are your keys. Here's how you punch in. Here's how you punch out. You get a lunch from here to here. We work from 8 to 5 or whatever it is. You start on call next week, by the way, and poof, you're gone. And it's just, wow, it's crazy. I don't know why that hit me as hard as it did, that there are professionals in the recruiting, hiring space. And I would wonder, is there a study, and I know you weren't prepared for this question, but I wonder if there was a study out there or something done about the level of success in being headhunted versus a random property hire. What is the success rate on longevity here or here? And I just wonder if the people who are recruited, headhunted, have a better work-life balance, better culture, if they're just better.
Yeah, I think I don't know the actual statistic off my top of my head, but it is a much higher success rate because one, if it's either the organization that has again, like I say, some of these companies are small. They don't have a designated department. So whoever's picking up the recruiting aspect of the business, right, they may or may not have the experience to even really put them through the interview process. What does that look like? And they don't have a great experience. But those people who do know what they're doing, this is their craft, even on the talent acquisition side, they're going to have a much higher success rate, because when they're intentionally making a call out and they're saying, okay, I'm intentionally choosing you to be interviewed, they have the formality of sharing and educating them through that process of, this is our brand, this is the experience, right? I would say the advantage of working with a third party is you get to actually educate them, walk them through this process, and they're a lot more transparent, right, from both sides of the market, because there's a level of vulnerability that comes into the play. And you also assess, where's the yellow flags? Where's the red flags? For, again, if it's mutually aligned for all parties involved. So there's absolutely a massive difference in terms of being headhunted or like getting called specifically to be interviewed versus you put in your application, we hope and pray it works out, and then we just see where this goes. And then again, the ads back up in probably 3 months turnaround time, because they never set them up for success. And half the people who take those opportunities are like, this is not what I signed up for. I thought this would be a different experience, and I was promised XYZ. None of those were delivered. And then now they're carrying the brunt of the work. Like you said, they're working every weekend, day in and day out. They don't have any breaks, and they're not even trained to really go on site. And so it's this repeat cycle. It's wild to think that the same issue was a decade ago when I entered the industry, and we're still talking about the same problems today.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Third question I have for you. What are you noticing when high quality employees, whether maintenance or operations, on-site management, but what are you noticing when these high quality employees are leaving their companies? Is there some common ground there? But what do you see in the executive recruiting world?
Yes. So this is a universal truth. Like really any industry, any type of background and experience you bring forward, every conversation, I broke it into the 4 C's. The 4 C's, it's nice to have this because you as an employee can assess this yourself. And as an employer, you can assess what's the likelihood that this person will accept our opportunity, especially if there's multiple offers on the table, right? If there's different organizations trying to poach this individual. The 4 C's I break it down to is the first one is company culture. Second one is compensation. The third is commute. And the fourth is challenges. And I'll break it down. Company culture is the number one reason why almost everybody will leave a company. It doesn't matter how much you pay them. It doesn't matter how much opportunity there is to grow within the organization. If there's a fear-driven or unhealthy workplace where it's affecting their mental health, or that they just at some point get fed up and they're like, I've done my time. I can't do this anymore. There's unethical things happening within the business, and it's going to be no longer in alignment with my values. That's the number one thing from every walk of life that will come forward to us. And the higher you get up within your, I would say, your career trajectory, the more critical company culture is everything. The highest level executives will not go for $100,000 raise. They're not going to go for the next best opportunity, right? They are very selective. So I would say as you mature in your career, you start shifting your value system. Yep. In the beginning of your career, naturally, right, you want to earn a living. You're usually building your family. You're starting to establish roots. So you might compromise on different areas, right? You might be a road warrior. So you might have a lot of commute on your thing. You might be stagnant in a role, right? And that would be, I would say, when you're more junior in your career, challenges and compensation is going to be the number one things that we're going to see that are going to trigger them to say, I want to look for something new. Because people typically, if they're a high performer, they're going to want to be challenged in their role. They're going to want to have growth. They understand, okay, at some point, the dollars aren't going to make sense if I'm not growing within the business, that they are going to be more marketable down the road. Or vice versa, they have all this growth, but the compensation is not also equally coming up. That would be for more the manager level and below. That's really where we'll see the pain points. Once you get to the director level and above, then you will start seeing a shift where it's no longer really about any of those things. It's only about company culture. Is that if you cannot, at some point, it's a contagious thing, right? So if you have an unhealthy culture, one, you're going to have your loyalist who will be there no matter what, ride or die. Yeah. But majority of the people who were hired to do their job, and if they are silenced or they are told, I want you to be a yes, sir, yes, ma'am person, that's when you'll see a shift. Or if they feel they have to sanitize how they communicate. I'm talking to this individual on the team, so I need to sanitize the way I communicate with them. I'm talking to this person, I got to be careful with what I say over here. And then you really realize, wow, this is not an environment where I see myself being successful and thriving, and let alone wanting to lead their teams under them in that kind of environment. Oftentimes, some of the best people leaders inside the market take a lot of the brunt, and they will shield them from the executive level. And once you're in the executive level, oftentimes those leaders for years will take on all the brunt, and they will do their best to try to make sure they shield their teams from experiencing the direct impact that they're taking on. Those are when we get the calls confidentially, and I call them the underground contacts, where they'll say, I got to get out. Yeah. I cannot do this any longer. Yeah. What do we need to do to create a game plan for me to create an exit strategy? Because at that point, that is really what it comes down to. So I always say every year, 6 months to a year as an employee, as an individual contributor, check in with yourself and say, okay, is this in alignment with the 4 C's? And at some point, you will find yourself either saying, yes, I'm pretty content. I would say 2 of the 4 C's needs to be compromised in order for you to seriously be ready to make a transition. Honestly, if you have 3 of the things and they're going great, stay, enjoy it while you can. There will be eventually a time where that will shift, right? So you'll see when you look at the tenure of executives, or anybody, right, for this matter, right, you'll see they have impeccable tenure. And then all of a sudden there's a shift after 10 years working, right? It's usually because they knew at some point everything was going great, but then new leadership or they got bought out and there was a merge and then it shifted. Then there's an exodus, right? That's the time when they know, okay, it's time to make a career change. I need to make a transition. So I wouldn't say just jump ship at any point in time just because there's a new opportunity. Be strategic. You really, at all levels, especially junior people, right? Be strategic about when do you make a career move? When do you level up from playing checkers to chess? How do you look at the board? How will this impact you long term? Mm-hmm. And so it's not even really about being a job hopper. Is you do need to have some longevity in a role because that's how you can say, okay, started on this project and I was able to see it come through to fruition for 3 years and the impact I had on the business, right? And the bottom line. If you're constantly leaving for the next best high paid job or the next best thing that just reached out to you or you just got tired of it one day and you didn't really have anything compromised, at some point, nobody will tell you this, but at some point, the higher level you get, you'll stunt yourself with growth because it looks like you don't play the long game. You don't have long-term vision. I always say, think about that as you are a junior and a manager, is that you want to gain as much experience as you can and lean into the 4 C's and see when is it the right time. I say about 2 to 3 years at an organization is really healthy. And then you do want to get experience working with different sizes of companies, different asset portfolios, because guess what? You will be even more valuable down the road because you can pull from those different types of background. Right. And then as you level up in that category, or later on in your careers, you mature, then that's when you need to be in a role about 5 to 7 years. Is really your sweet spot of being able to say, okay, I implemented these things within the organization. This is how it impacted the business. And I have proof, metrics, data, and also just testimonials of the difference I made. So that probably went way more in advance than what you probably were asking. But I hope that does give some clarity and some color into like how you can be your own advocate inside the market.
Right. No, I mean, that's exactly what I wanted. And I think that's exactly what we as an industry need to hear.
Yes.
I talk to people all the time. People always calling, hey, do you know of anything? Do you know? And this is the type of conversation that people just need to hear. They need to hear it and they need to know what to do for themselves. I thought it was the perfect amount of detail. So thank you for that. And the four C's, I don't think I'd ever, if I had heard that before, I had forgotten. That's really interesting. And I think you're onto something there. Every 6 months to a year, do a self-check. Yeah. Where are you in your 4 C's? If you have 3 of the 4, tough it out. Like, I don't say tough it out, but stay. If things are going well, and then go for it. If you're down to 2, then maybe.
Yeah. It's time to maybe think about that. And if you're because the grass isn't always greener, I would say you're going to trade it for something else. Even when you get to the very highest on the totem pole, I always say there's usually one toxic leader always sitting up at the top. You just have to figure out what are you willing and what are you not willing to compromise on, because there's no perfect company and there's no perfect candidate. That's why I always laugh when people are like, we're looking for the perfect person. It's, first of all, that mindset will get you in trouble over and over because there is no perfect job and there is no perfect person. You will always have to find compromise with what you're looking at. You just have to figure out what's your non-negotiables and where's your values, and then you stick with it. You move forward in that direction.
That's great. So, Kelsey, you have recently joined the MMN family. Yes. You have your own podcast on the network. So I would like to give you a few minutes to talk about your podcast, talk about Leaders on Deck. If we have any listeners who would want to reach out to you personally maybe they're looking, maybe their 4 C's aren't lining up and they want to know what their next steps need to be. How can the listeners reach out to you? So podcast Leaders on Deck, and give us some contact information.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. So I'm so excited that we are been partnered with also Multifamily Media Network with our latest podcast, Meet Your Next Best Hire. Mm-hmm. And what's cool about this, it's a very different type of podcast where we feature high-level leaders that are looking to land their next venture. They get to share their story of pretty much what every employer wants to know. So I intentionally ask questions that, let's seem boring, sure. But at the end of the day, that's what every employer wants to know is, what's your leadership management style? How does that impact the bottom line? What is your expertise? What are you known for in your craft? How did you get into the industry? They want to know those things. Those are the constant, continuous questions that come up. And so it's really cool that they can share their stories from their own voice, get rid of the piece of paper, and they can actually leverage our platform and with our partners to be able to get out there and have more opportunities come back to them. I'm a huge believer in you don't have to do all the work of headhunting on your own. You want to be as successful as possible, and you want to market yourself, because that's really where all the magic is. That's where you're going to get so many more new contacts, new friends, new colleagues. You just never know what will come out of those conversations. So that's a little bit about Meet Your Next Best Hire. And that's really affiliated with our sister brand, Leaders on Deck. So this is our newest venture. We're super excited. So any of your listeners or anybody on your network who is, I don't know where to start, I know that at some point I need to make a career shift, or I'm in the market actively looking, this place is for you. We have literally built this exclusively for all verticals of real estate. So whether you're multifamily, SFR, BTR, any type of industry across the nation, we have built a community for you, by you. So essentially it gives you all of, we were talking about earlier, resume, right? We have everything set up. I have a custom video on exactly what you need to put there. It's very straightforward. We even have ready to go templates that you can use that we believe are the most effective and efficient inside the industry of how to market yourself. We have a custom LinkedIn optimization of what do you need on there, what do you not need on there, and why it matters. And then also just all of the resources, our vetted partners, so that way when you find yourself getting laid off, or you need to find your next venture out there, you don't have to do it all alone and use Google and try to figure it out. You have one centralized location where we are literally advertising, featuring, and helping you gain as much exposure for the top performers inside the real estate verticals. So that way, hiring managers that are coming to our platform can see it. We garner on average about 1 million views per month between the whole Corey network. So we have a lot of visibility. That is why we're able to build this out and help industry folks land their next role. Because our biggest thing is, how do we get them back into decision-making seats? How do we get them from on this side of the market over back into the employed side? Because that is essentially what's going to help bridge this gap. And that's why Leaders on Deck exists. It's also an industry job board. We're rolling out with phase 2 on that too. So anybody who is those smaller organizations and they're really struggling and they don't necessarily have the capacity to hire a full-time recruiter, great. Advertise your opportunities here, because we have the people that are looking to hopefully maybe even be that applicant that you were looking for. So that's just a high-level review. Corey Executive Recruiting, we specialize pretty much from everything from a manager to the C-suite, all across different verticals of real estate, placing high-level leaders. And we genuinely care about people's stories, and finding the right, I would say, company culture is probably our expertise. Out of all of it is really aligning, not just looking at all the talent, but how do you find the one? And how do you really make those introductions with the right organizations and the right top talent in a fraction of the time? Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Also, if you are looking for a new opportunity, or you want to get on our radar, reach out to resumes at coryexecutive.com. That's resumes at coryexecutive.com. We would love to hear from you, and send us a note on LinkedIn. I'm always open to making new connections. And thank you again, Mark, so much for sharing your time with me today and inviting me to your platform.
No, I appreciate you being here. And I'm really excited about this episode to come out. I think it's, I don't know, once you joined the network and I saw what you were talking on, and I got into it and I dove into it, and I said, this is something we need. Our industry needs this, and it needs to be visual. I didn't know there were headhunters or executive recruiters in our industry.
Yeah.
And maybe that's because I'm just at a level where it's not something that I would have heard of. But it really opened my eyes, and I thought, this is going to be great. This is going to be really good to have someone come on and be a professional and tell us what we need to know. Why have we been doing it wrong? And make some simple, easy tweaks, and hopefully get some higher, more qualified individuals in the empty seats that the industry is plagued with at the moment. So
yes.
I love it. So thank you for taking time to come on Multifamily Mixtape. And for those of you who are loyal listeners, I appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe. If you leave me a comment, you get one of those right there. You get a hat.
I love that.
Kelsey, do you want a hat?
I would love it. Please.
Okay. I'm shipping you a hat. I'm shipping you a hat. All right. You got it. Well, thank you so much for joining me. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks again for taking time out of your day to listen to this episode. I hope you found it entertaining and insightful. If you like this episode, please like, comment, and subscribe. Also visit multifamilymedianetwork.com to learn more about our other industry podcasts and sponsorship opportunities. And until next time, don't be afraid to crank the volume.